Hello there, my name is Victor Obinka, and you're welcome to the midweek edition of Today in the News, and of course all of those newspapers across the Federation, and looking at the major headlines everywhere.
Over 1,000 people are benefiting from free medical services provided by the FCT chapter.
Interested in this news. Arsenal's first club transfer record signed Pep.
Good morning and welcome to the news of Vanguard Live. My name is Damola Ogunshaki and I'm with my co-host, Precious Chupuni. Of course, here we read and give in-depth analysis on some of the stories making waves across Nigeria. And of course, let's go straight to the paper review, and we'll be starting with the front page of Vanguard. And here we have hashtag ENDSARS Promoters ACCOUNT. Afenifere, Middle Belt, Ohanaeze, others blast Akeredolu. Akeredolu is also saying, I see nothing wrong in freezing promoters' accounts. You can't kill protests with terror. FNBLF tells Buhari, freezing the accounts may trigger another protest. That's coming from Ohanaeze. And Pandef is also telling federal government that treat issue with utmost care. Concerned professionals are saying which aren't approach wrong. NBA CSOs blast Akeredolu, describe him as a military apologist. You can see that story on page 5. And on the front page, we have photo stories of COVID-19, NYC members being tested for COVID-19. And away from that, on page 12, we have a Unilag. I regret signing report, says visitation panel chair, as Buhari restates VC. And on page 8, we have appointment of judges, court OK suit against Buhari. Also, Nigeria ratifies membership of African Continental Free Trade Area as agreement kicks off January 1st, 2021. Murder, corruption, others. Police dismiss 10 officers in Lagos. You can see that story on page 6. And above the nameplate on page 33, Buhari, Obasanjo, Jonathan, governors, Tinubu, others mourn as ex-Kaduna governor Balarabe Musa dies at 84. On page 7, we have a feature out sponsors of Boko Haram. Senate tells the federal government. Army releases a list of 86 most wanted terrorists. And also, we are aware of attempt to weaken NOT before 2023. That's coming from the Northern Elders. And lastly, on the front page of Vanguard, we have NDIC, CBN battle safety issues in Nigeria's fintech environment. And you can see that story on page 19. And from the front page of Vanguard, we move straight to the Punch newspaper.
And on the Punch newspaper, we have main headline. Main headline says the federal government under fire for tagging hashtag ENDSARS campaigners terrorists. The writer says government turning Boko Haram insurgents to freedom fighters, protesters, terrorists. It is an attempt to intimidate state panel of inquiry, alleged Zekome. Federal government insincere, pretentious, says NBA. To government, treasury looters are saints or Dinkalu. Stories above, we have Army declare Shekau, Al-Barnawi, and 84 others, Boko Haram terrorists wanted. You can see that on page 7. And on page 12, Ohanaeze back to Mahi on defection, says PDP unkind to Indigbo. And on page 18, $1 million capital, 753 Nigerian traders in Ghana request evacuation. And from the Punch newspaper, we move straight to the Nation.
And on the front page of the Nation, we have a rollover panel to dispose of recovered government assets. Senior lawyers, rights activists to the General Federation lacks power to set up committee. You can see that story on page 4. ASU can't claim varsity autonomy, says the federal government. And also NCDC, why yellow fever is spreading. Lastly, on the front page of The Nation, we have ENDSARS, hashtag ENDSARS, Banire Utomi, Falano, others slam federal government for dictatorship. You can see that story on page 8. And from the front page of The Nation, we move to this day newspaper.
And on this day newspaper, main headline, US-led coalition offers Nigeria, other West African nation help to rout terrorism. The writer says, Army declares 86 Boko Haram leaders, fighters wanted. Buratai absorb civilian JTF, hunters into military operations. Senate opposes reintegration of reformed terrorists into society. LCCI Nasima applauds as Nigeria joins AFCTA. Agreement kicks off January 2021. Also, federal government explains push for multimodal accident investigation bureau. You can see that on page 8. And lastly, on the front page of this day, Buhari dissolves the UNILAG Council. VC has case to answer. Panel chair insists.
And that's all of the front pages. And we're going on a short break now. And when we return, we have a guest who will be joining us to analyze the front pages. Stay with us, we'll be back. All right, welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is today in the News on Vanguard Live, and my name is Damlola Abushaki. I'm with my co-host,
Precious Tripodi.
and of course, Mrs. Fumi Komolafe is joining us today to analyze the front pages of the papers, and also she's the former Labour editor of Vanguard newspaper. Good morning. Good morning, Mrs. Fumi.
Good morning. How are you doing?
We are fine, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, ma'am.
Good morning.
Yes, ma'am. Let's talk about, of course, what's currently going on. Of course, the aftermath of ENDSARS protest. Some protesters have been arrested. Of course, accounts have been frozen, and many people have been reacting to it. And many Nigerians have been reacting, and that includes, of course, Governor Akeredolu. And yesterday, of course, they made a statement that got many Nigerians reacting on social media. You know, he said that people, there's nothing wrong with freezing accounts. So, of course, we have Afenifere and others who have reacted, saying that it's not the right thing that is supposed to come off from the governor's mouth. But I would like to get your reaction on this matter.
Well, both sides are right, depending on who is looking at it from what angle. I think the governor spoke first as a lawyer. I think his position is that since CBN went to court to freeze those accounts, and you want to unfreeze your accounts, then you go back to the court to ask the court to unfreeze your accounts. However, it's not as simple as that. Because what is clearly seen is that this is a political reaction. What the government is trying to do is to clamp down. That's the way it is seen. And the timing also. Okay? So that makes it look like, that makes it clearly a clamp down on political opponents. And that is wrong. However, the world has changed. All over the world now, in any country, your account can be investigated. If you are suspected of terrorism, in this particular situation, unfortunately, the government has not established that it is doing so because of fear of funds for terrorism. For instance, until now, we haven't heard that government has frozen anyone's account on account of his or her involvement with Boko Haram, which has been the real terrorist organization that we have been facing for years. In this particular instance, I think the government is wrong, because to use state power to clamp down political opponents, because political opponents are not necessarily people who want to seize power from you. They could be, and as in this case, people who have strong reasons to agree with what is going on in the system. So to that extent, the government is wrong.
Okay. Yes.
However,
you talked about terrorism earlier, Ms. Komolafe. You said terrorism. So Governor Akeredolu said that it's not in conclusion that those accounts were used. Used for acts of terrorism or treason. But linking protesters to terror and terrorism, what do you think about this? Do you think it's actually right?
I won't say it's right, because it's dangerous to assume that every protester is a saint. That will be completely wrong. Okay? The fact that you are a protester does not mean that you may not have terrorist links with terrorists. Let's get it right. So if the governor is looking at it from that perspective, it may not be completely wrong. Everybody, it's not everybody that took part in the protest that didn't have other motives. Let's get this clear. The governor may be right, but then I would even think that it is high-handed to freeze the accounts. What the government may have done is to put a seal. You can put a seal on an account. If, for instance, you find 10 billion that I cannot explain in my account, and you put a seal that until I cannot make a withdrawal of more than, say, 300,000, and you must have studied the pattern of my withdrawal. Okay? So, to an extent, anybody can be suspected of terrorism. The fact that you are still a peaceful protest may not absorb everybody in that protest as free from linking.
Hello, ma'am. I think we're having breaking network there. Okay, so still talking about this, what is currently going on. There's actually been a lot that they've been saying about this ENDSARS protest, and of course, many Nigerians. This is what Governor Akeredolu. Okay, we have you back, ma'am. Okay, so you were talking about them, but there's a question I also would like to ask you. The Igbo worldwide has dissociated itself with, of course, from the action of Mr. Kenechukwu Okeke over the lawsuit against the senior pastor of Daystar, that's Samadeyemi, Davido, Two-Face, and 47 others. Now, I'd like to ask you, how do you think this will affect him as a Nigerian and also someone from, of course, from Igbo land?
No, I think that's a very ridiculous suit or case if anybody says that. So the fact that a Davido or a Vaz or Pastor Samadeyemi identify with the protest, does that make them terrorists? No. I think that's frivolous and it should be dismissed. You have to prove beyond reasonable doubt. You have to convince others that you have more information than what everybody has seen. Okay, so that for me is a non-issue. Somebody just wants to exercise his right to be heard. That's the way I see it. It's a non-issue.
All right, Ma, let's talk about, the fact that Senate has told the federal government to find out or fish out sponsors of Boko Haram. And, the Senate told the federal government that they need to find the sponsors of Boko Haram as well as for immediate persecution. And they also took a swipe at the Nigerian army over its amnesty for repentant Boko Haram members. What do you think about this?
First, I think that the amnesty for Boko Haram members, personally, I think is wrong. Because these are murderers, and we are putting them back in society. You never can tell when they will go back to this length, and once they are within the society, it's going to be more difficult to tackle them. Then the issue of declaring some people, I thought Shekara was dead. So which other Shekara? Now, they must declare them wanted, especially somebody that has been dead. Shout for them. We have done this noise about declaring them wanted, because I can tell you that in the next 2 or 3 days, a Boko Haram video will surface where they will say, "Look, we're alive, we're in Sambisa, and nobody's touching us." Blah, 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 and then you hear a lot of noise. So I think it's high time we change the military, Look at it's high time we ask for sincere help in the areas where we need help. And America offered us help since the time of Jonathan. But the fifth columnist within the military scuttled that thing, and since then we have not been able to to tackle Boko Haram effectively. Rather, we have even moved from Boko Haram to herdsmen to banditry, and it's getting worse by the day.
All right, seeing that, some members of the hashtag ENDSARS protest, where it was easy for, them to be picked from their homes or from anywhere, because, some persons said they had intelligence information that they were used with or without their knowledge to cause, the whole panic in the country. Now, it's so easy to fish them out, but why is it so hard to find Shekau? Why is it so hard to find the 84 others that have been wanted? I mean, they keep mentioning Sambisa, and it looks like Sambisa is no longer part of the country if we keep mentioning Sambisa Forest and that they are sure that they are there. Why is it very hard to find these people?
It's just what has happened shows the incompetence of our security agencies. These people are in their homes, so it's very easy to pick them, look at them on Facebook, get them on Twitter. It's so easy. You don't need any military training to be able to do that. That's why they are picking them as if you pick Winkle by the riverside. Okay? To show that you are trained with military intelligence is to be able to fish out Boko Haram terrorists, which unfortunately they have not been able to do. Picking up these guys is just very cheap, and it doesn't portray our security agencies as competent in any way.
All right, there are also, there are reports that some of these repentant Boko Haram, they eventually cause more atrocities when they are, being put back into society. And also they enjoy some perks like traveling abroad, for school. And this is not the case of even the normal Nigerian student who is here. If you look at the case of the NDDC, when some of the students who were abroad were saying that their fees have not been paid, but then you see these repentant Boko Haram members who are giving, the grand amnesty, and then they travel abroad to go and further their education. So what do you think is wrong with this system?
A lot is wrong. A lot is wrong. In the first case, I'm against this amnesty for this guy. To now be using taxpayers' money to send them abroad for training, when you have millions of youths here that they are positively trained youths that can contribute to the society and are left here moving around aimlessly and idle to, and then go and send Boko Haram repentance, if they ever repented, abroad, is wrong. I think there's something wrong with the thinking of our political leaders. And this is all because, and it is beginning to look like, is it because these people in Boko Haram are from a section of the country? There's need to answer that question. Although, again, there are some who argue that, when it was the turn of when the Niger Delta militants were making trouble, many of them were sent abroad to, to go and train, acquire skills and come back. But you cannot compare the atrocities, if I may put it in that way, committed by Boko Haram with what the Niger Delta militants did. It's a wide gap, very, very wide gap. So I think that there's the need for a rethink of our political leaders just getting it right. And they will not get it right as long as they continue to run a system that disconnects those in government from the followership. The disconnect is so wide, and that's why they are not getting things right. I am opposed to amnesty for Boko Haram terrorists, whether you call them repentance or not. Even if you must, forgive them or give them amnesty, must you send them abroad? There are so many things they can do here, So many things they can do here. So I think we're sitting on a keg of gunpowder that can explode at any time, and the consequence may be too damning for us.
Okay, still talking about these ENDSARS protests. Of course, Northern Elders Forum, that's NEF, have said they were aware that they are aware of alleged attempt by some politicians interested in contesting in 2023 presidential election to weaken the North on many fronts in the aftermath of the ENDSARS protests. So we're still talking about the aftermath of ENDSARS protests and also 2023 elections. From what you, of course, saw during the protest and after the protest, do you think their statement is right?
How can that be? It's a statement that does not make any sense as far as I'm concerned. Who is weakening the nerve? Can you compare the damage in any part of the nerve with what happened in Lagos? No state suffered what the losses that Lagos State suffered. So to talk about weakening the North, what is the meaning of that? If the North is weakened, the North weakened itself, because they have been in power for so many years, and look at what we are having: poverty, Al-Barnawi, all sorts of things, and they have taken steps that have alienated their allies. The Middle Belt is supposed saying I will never go again with the killings in Benue, and now the Buhari government reacted to it as if those people were not human beings. Don't forget that's what made APC to lose that state, because Autumn had to go with his people and forget their party. So if the North sees itself as being weakened, and I emphasize sees itself, because nobody sees the North as being weakened. It is the North that has weakened itself, and they should not blame it on any other person.
Mrs. Kamala,
or any other party.
I want to ask you, please, do you support restructuring of Nigeria?
Of course.
Okay,
Of course.
so I would like you to react to this statement coming from the NEF's director, publicity and advocacy, that's Dr. Hakim. He said that the North was capable of identifying and protecting its own interests and will neither be blackmailed nor intimidated into accepting restructuring as a means to higher standard. So you think that you're in support of of restructuring and many Nigerians. I would like you to react to this.
That's a very selfish statement. Look, it's either we restructure and remain as one country, or we go our different ways. There are only two options. Even in your home, sometimes you rearrange some things to suit prevailing circumstances, not to talk of a nation. So maybe the agenda is they want us to go our separate ways. And if we go our separate ways, many nations will come out of Nigeria. Many. It won't be 3 blocks, not south, east, west, no. Many will come out. So that's a very selfish statement for someone who is insensitive, or a group that is insensitive to the feelings of others. And we cannot continue that way as a nation.
All right, let's look at, we'll go on a short break. When we come back, we'll continue further. Right, let's talk about the fact that the Lagos State Command, State Police Command has dismissed no fewer than 10 of its personnel for various offences ranging from murder, excessive use of power, corruption, amongst others. Now, the question is, should these policemen should they just be dismissed without facing the law? Because now they're coming to, they say they've been dismissed, their name was not published. That's the question that a lot of people have been asking. Should they just be dismissed without facing the law?
No, I think that dismissal is the first step. I do not think that they don't want to prosecute them. I want to believe that it's the first step. Otherwise, it will not be complete. I agree, the dismissal is a huge punishment, but it doesn't answer all the questions. If they are killed, then they must face the law. Because murder is the state versus the person. So maybe it is the beginning of a process of litigation. We have to wait and see. Otherwise, it will appear that the response to the ENDSARS protest is not complete, and it will not be justice just to dismiss them without making them to face the law, because that may not be enough to serve as a deterrent to others. Basically, they have to be brought before the law.
All right, let's just move on and talk about something more interesting, and that's the fact that a Federal Executive Council has ratified Nigeria's membership of Africa Continental Free Trade Area, that's AFCFTA, as the implementation of the agreement starts 1st of January 2021. Now, the question is that what exactly will this membership do for Nigeria?
Well, I want to assume that it's about free trade, but Nigeria has enough to export if you look at it from that angle. So, but again, you cannot have free trade without some form of control. Otherwise, we will again be a dumping ground. Look, I had the opportunity to visit Burkina Faso, and virtually all the plastics you have in Burkina Faso, they are from Nigeria. Now, if trade is not properly regulated, they were taken there by individuals. Now, if trade is not properly regulated, there will be no income for government from that kind of trade. And then I think the government needs income from that kind of trade. It is good for us, but we must be careful not to also make our country a dumping ground where all sorts of inferior goods come in and compete with our goods. But more importantly, we may be disadvantaged where those countries have power to produce and we don't have. Our own goods may become more expensive than the imported ones. And any consumer that goes to the market to pick up an item is not thinking about patriotism. He's thinking about what can my money buy? What's my purchasing power? So we have to be careful. We have to make sure that we still put in place some regulations that can protect our own industry. But on the surface, it's a good development.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Fumi-Komolafe. Thanks for sharing your thoughts with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, and of course,
and enjoy your day.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. And of course, she is the former Labour editor of Vanguard newspaper. And of course, that's all we have for you today. But before we go, let's look at what Mr. and Mrs. are saying. And of course, the first person speaking today is Mr. It says, you look good with this pregnancy. You remind me of my mom. So it's actually Robin, the wife told me. And Mrs. says, that's what they do after putting their wives in this condition. Pregnant women suddenly become old women to their husbands. Aren't men pathetic?
Well, speaking about things like that, it's just one of how, women are very, very conscious of their body, of how they look like, because some of them, a lot of times, especially when you talk to your mom or, older women, so they tell you, I used to be, a lot more slimmer than when I had, you or had other children and all of that. But then, they are superheroes.
Of course, yes, they are
superheroes.
Of course, and that's all we have for you. You can always like and follow us on our social media platforms, showing on your screen, or visit our website www.vanguardnhr.com to get more of our top stories. For now, on Today in the News is bye from me, Damola Goshaki, and from our co-host,
Precious Tripoli. Thank you for watching.